Hey everyone, it's Andy Raffel from eTeknix.com, and it's been a long time since we did a build. Now, Be Quiet actually approached us and sponsored this video, hence why I look like an advert, and they've basically brought out some new fans. These are the new Lightwings. We've got two different sizes of them, and we thought, instead of just showing you some fans, showing you what it's all about, let's do a full-on build, especially with the release of Intel's Alder Lake 12th gen processors. So, in the famous words of me, let's do this. So we've got a build going on here, and I will talk about kind of everything as we go through it. So anyone who's seen any builds that we've done in the past will know that we always try and build up kind of as much on the motherboard as physically possible, just to make our lives a little bit easier when we're transferring it over to the case. So motherboard wise, obviously we are using Intel 12th gen, so therefore we are going with Z690. And this board here is the Z690 Carbon Wi-Fi. It's basically got all of the high-end features that you'd expect without kind of breaking the bank. Now, we are going to need one vital thing, which I am going to use this as a little bit of a sales opportunity. eTeknix PC Maintenance Toolkit. You can pick yours up on store.eteknix.com, and it's got absolutely everything you need to build, repair and maintain your PC. So we are going to need that. We're probably even going to do a little bit of a Black Friday deal on it. So if you head over to there and use the discount code that is in the description below, then you're going to save some money. Now, when you actually look at these motherboards, for anyone who's not seen them, and I definitely advise you to go and check out our content on the kind of roundup and the previews that we did on these, the socket is ever so slightly different. It kind of works on a weird hinge mechanism. So it opens like that. Now, processor wise, we are going to be going with the latest, the greatest, kind of, I guess, the gaming king now, because that's what this build is all about. It's all about gaming. We're going to go with the Core i9 12900K. We are going to put that in, line up all the notches, and the plastic will pop off, and we can just throw that away. If you're going to be going for a 12900K, you're not on a budget, so we're going to go with this instead, which is the latest Seagate FireCuda 530 2TB drive. It has blistering fast speeds of sort of 7,300 megabytes a second and about 6,800 in terms of kind of real world usage. Okay, so SSD's in. Let's talk about memory. Now with Z690, we have obviously got different memory we could go with depending on the board. So there are DDR4 boards out there, which most people are going to be sort of familiar with, but this one actually supports the latest and greatest. And I'm starting to see a little bit of a theme here with the words latest and greatest, because it is. We have the latest and greatest SSD, motherboard, processor, and now memory. We're going with the Corsair Dominator DDR5, 32 gig, 5200 megahertz. So, you know, not for the faint-hearted. Now there is a little rhyme when it comes to memory, which is roses are red, violets are blue. Put your memory in slots 4 and 2. So there you have it. Once it's in, it's going to look like that. So we are going to be using Be Quiet's Pure Loop 240, but we're not going to be using the fans that come with it, because, you know, that is what this build is all about. So instead, we're going to be using the Lightwings 120mm, and then in the front of the case, we're probably going to end up sticking the 140mm in there. And we are going to show you exactly kind of what the lighting effects are on these, how they look, kind of what effects you can actually do, what kind of features, you know, the fans actually have. And then we're going to go into the all-important thing, which is checking out the gaming performance. So we basically have everything built up, including the bracket on here. There was no point showing you because we try and make these videos as short as possible, to the point, concise, to fit in basically below 20 minutes. Also, this jumper, really nice, but it is getting a bit warm in here, so I'm going to have to take it off. Jesus, is it tight? So let's just... We can continue. This is the Pure Base 500 DX. And basically, it's got the world's smallest amount of RGB on it. It's not something that Be Quiet really ever wanted to kind of get into. You know, they were always about kind of the stealthy look, the black look, and how amazing that all was. If I remember rightly, this is actually the first Be Quiet product with RGB. Then they brought out kind of the RGB on their AIO coolers, and then it just kind of stemmed from there, and that is what's led us to the Lightwings, which I'm going to be honest, from sort of the get-go, they do look like kind of the original fans that they have, just with a light ring around it, which, you know, no problem with that. If it does the job, and you know, I'm sure it will, then happy days. So now it's time to put our motherboard in the case. Now, just like most motherboards these days, it's actually got a built-in I/O shield already on the motherboard, so we don't need to worry about kind of building everything and then realizing that we forgot the rear I/O. I'm not saying I've ever done that before, but you know, people have, so there is that. Next thing we need to do is we need to take out these fans inside, because they are not giving us what we need. By the power of movie magic, the fans are now in, and this is basically what they look like, which they do look like these, but with a ring around it. And like I say, that's not necessarily a bad thing. So you will notice that we have got two 140s in the front because that is the maximum that we can fit into this case. You can also go with three 120s if you want to, but we're going to be using the 120s for something else. So we have actually got a 120 in the rear as well. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put our pure loop at the top. So here's the AIO itself, and we're thinking that's going to sit, comfortably up in the top like that. So basically we want to put the fans this way so that we can sort of hide all the cables. Do we want it that way, or probably more that way? Now before we actually put the AIO in the top, put these through first. So these are basically the EPS connectors. So we've got 8-pin and a 4+4. So depending on your motherboard and what connectors it's got, definitely put these in through first, because otherwise when you decide to put your radiator up there, you're going to go to put that in, you're not going to have much room, you're going to rip your hands to pieces, and that's just not fun. Let's talk about the AIO. So pure loop 240. So we have got some cables here. This is always a fun job, especially when you're doing it by yourself, because you kind of have to have about 6 different hands. Because what you've actually got to do is try and feed everything through while also trying to sort of put this up there, holding it into place. And especially if you're right-handed, like me, you then have to try and sort of screw things down to hold it into place to then move on to the next step. And the AIO is in, kind of. It's in the top and everything's sorted there. So now we can actually take the dust filter, which I've got to admit, I kind of like the branding and everything on here. You got kind of Be Quiet and the nice sort of monochrome black and white. But yeah, I think it looks quite nice. It sits there and everything's good. Now we actually need to look at getting this part, which is the CPU block. I know you all love a good peel, so there's that. And we need to get that on, but this one doesn't actually come with thermal paste pre-applied. So we're gonna get our trusty Notchua NTH1. We're gonna put a little blob, about the size of a pea, just on there, and then we can actually look at screwing this down. So as I mentioned, everything's in and looking amazing, apart from that. I just love that. It's just so versatile, you can basically have it whatever way you want and it will look great. Now, with the fans, it did come with one little added feature, which I'm a little bit confused by, purely because it comes with a hub. And firstly, it says V1 on the back. So is there a V2 in the works? Is it going to have more? Basically, it has 6 ARGB connectors on there. But the beauty of these fans is the fact that they come with a female and a male ARGB connector. So basically they can be daisy chained. So is there really any need for a hub? I'm sure there's reasoning behind it. I'm sure Be Quiet will let me know once they watch this video, and then I can explain it to everyone on Twitter or something. But I mean, essentially, you don't really need this. So there are a couple of connectors that we need to put in. We've got our USB Type-C connector, front panel USB header, HD audio, and the front panel headers for the power button and power LED. So power supply wise, we've decided to go with the Dark Power 12. This is a 750 watt, 80 plus titanium rated power supply. And I've got to admit, it's one of the coolest looking power supplies ever. I don't know what it is, but something about this kind of mesh on it just looks decent. And then we're going to put it in a case like this and you're never going to see it again. So, again, power of movie magic. Probably starting to see a little bit of a theme here, but we didn't want to bore you guys. We wanted to show you kind of what it's all about. And we are now onto the final step, which I think we've done a pretty decent job of cable management, considering, that's the problem. Kind of when you're working with RGB, you haven't just got your PWM header, you've also got another cable for that. So you imagine you've got 2 cables, 2 cables, 2 cables, 2 cables, 2 cables. And if my maths is any good, that makes 10 cables. 10 cables, plus obviously the one coming from the AIO, the one coming from the pump. There's a kind of a lot going on, and I just want to double check. I have actually connected absolutely everything. So, GPU. I know it's a sore subject. I know it's one of them things where, everyone wants a GPU, no one can get a GPU, and then when you can, it's not really the one that you want, and you just kind of have to settle and then pay more for it. But we're going to be using the MSI RTX 3080 Ti. It's probably, in my opinion, one of the best looking graphics cards on the market. This is the creme de la creme. I mean, yes, you could argue that the 3080, is maybe better from a performance to value standpoint if we're talking MSRPs, and you could also argue the 3090 is the best graphics card out there, but not everyone needs the whole, 24 gig of VRAM and everything. So what we're gonna do is line it up with where we want it to be. And then it tells us that we need to take out slots 2 and 3. So if we unscrew this, I still don't understand, even with kind of cheaper brands out there today, why they have them horrible snap-off ones. I mean, are these really that much more expensive? So, got that off. We can now look at lining this up, and it is a beast of a graphics card, yet it still fits inside the Pure Base 500 DX case from Be Quiet. And then we can line it up, give it a little bit of gentle persuasion, should we say, and then screw it back down into place. So last thing to do is to put our PCI Express connectors on here, and this is actually something I was saying off camera that I really like that Be Quiet do, is none of their PCI Express cables are actually pigtailed. So you haven't got to worry about another one kind of sitting here looking ugly. Obviously, if you did want to make it look a little bit prettier, then you could always go down the route of custom cables or custom extensions. In the past, we've typically used brands like To The Wire Mods, and yeah. So, getting 2 of them in, looking for the third one. Obviously, you have the choice of going above the graphics card or below the graphics card. In this case, because of the size of it, and we didn't want it kind of blocking the logo, which obviously lights up RGB on the Supreme X graphics card, I think that just looks a little bit cleaner. And if you really wanted to, you could tidy that up a little bit more by cable tying them together using a handy dandy cable tie from store.eteknix.com. So that is the build. I guess now what we need to do is boot it up, show you what the RGB fans actually look like, and then sort of maybe show you a few different effects, what it's all about. First kind of time that Be Quiet have actually made RGB fans. And then we can look at that all important gaming performance. So let's take a look at some of the lighting effects. So as standard, we can see that we are set up in rainbow mode. This just means it's just gonna carry on cycling through different sort of colors on the RGB fans, as well as on the small amount of RGB actually on the case. If we change that to color shift, we can see that it goes off for a little bit, comes back on, and then it just literally cycles around various different colors one by one, instead of having that addressable nature like we'd expect with addressable RGB fans. This is all controlled through MSI's MSI Center, formerly known as Dragon Center, Mystic Light, and many other names that it's gone by. There are a few other effects that we can sort of go through. Just want to really show you kind of how things look on these RGB fans when we actually change it to different settings. So we can change it to breathing, and again, we get full control over the various different colors that we can choose. So at the moment it's on red, we can change that over to purple, we can click apply, and then after a short second or two, it then applies everything to be purple. There are a few other settings depending on your motherboard and how you've actually got the fans connected in, but you can do things like CPU temperature, you can have it flashing, for instance. Again, you do get a full choice of the colors on the RGB spectrum, so you can change that. But admittedly, something like flashing is probably going to get on your nerves a little bit. I actually think rainbow is probably the nicest effect on these fans. It just really looks nice, incorporates a whole load of colors, and just really gives you that nice kind of RGB unicorn rainbow kind of look that we all know and love. So let's get into some games and see exactly how this system performs, starting with Dirt 5. So we're actually at 4K, 3840 by 2160 on the render resolution and the final resolution. VSync is turned off. We have got dynamic resolution scaling on. Everything is pretty much on high, and then we have also got ray tracing shadows turned on as well, because why not? You know, if you've got a card that can do ray tracing, that's exactly what we want to see. So starting the game, we can see our average frame rate in the top left corner is at about 84 frames per second. The game visually just looks absolutely stunning. With the ray tracing shadows, we're getting some really nice reflections. We are at 4K, and yeah, things are just looking really, really nice. Currently still 83, 87 frames per second, so we could technically go a little bit higher with some of the settings up to the max setting, but with ray tracing, I do feel that probably gonna see closer to maybe 40 frames per second, and you know, we want to be above that magical 60 FPS number. And now we're actually just around 100 frames per second, so we are teetering between sort of 90 to 102 frames per second, depending on the part of the scene that we're actually in. So next up, we've got Doom Eternal. Now, this game is probably one of the most well-optimized games I've ever played of recent years. So setting-wise, we're at 4K, vertical sync is turned off. We have got ray tracing set to on, DLSS is set to balanced with a sharpness of 55, and then overall quality is literally maxed out. We are at Ultra Nightmare, so let's see exactly how this is going to perform. Okay, so jumping straight in, we're at 170 frames per second, 165 average. And if anyone hasn't actually played this game yet, you really are missing out. It's pretty much one of the most visually stunning games for something that's kind of fairly fast paced, I guess. And you can do crazy stuff like this as well. So yeah, 190 frames, 163, 186. We really are getting some kind of decent frame rates, and that really comes down to the fact that this game is so well optimized, even in sort of, you know, these weird little kind of cutscene bits and stuff as well. Okay, so next up we're looking at Godfall, and settings wise again, we are at 4K. We have our quality preset, which sets everything view distance, shadow quality all to epic. And then as we scroll down, we have also got ray tracing set to balance. So let's see exactly how this performs. So for anyone who hasn't actually played Godfall, it really, really does harness the beauty of ray tracing, just with all the reflections and the lighting and everything. It's like one big gem, if that makes sense. And we are getting sort of 84, 85 frames per second, even in kind of these scenes where I guess essentially there is a lot of light going on, lots of particles and things like that. Did have a slight drop there into the 60s, but overall anywhere between sort of 60 frames per second and 80 frames per second. I'm guessing as we get into a fight or something, that will obviously go down a little bit, but I'm not expecting too much. Okay, so next up is Metro Exodus. Again, we're at 4K. Quality is set to Ultra. Now, if anyone has played this game, you'll know kind of how demanding it really is. You could put it up there with the likes of Crysis and other similar games like that. We have got motion blur set to high. We're on DX12. RTX is on, ray tracing is set to high, and DLSS is on as well, just so we're not getting that kind of dip by putting on the ray tracing. Tessellation's on, texture filter into AF16. Let's see how it looks. Okay, so we're in the game. We're getting just under 100 frames per second at the moment. Let's see if we can get into some kind of action and see what the frame rate actually ends up dropping to. Okay, so we're currently at 103 frames per second. Which isn't too bad at all, considering the settings that we're actually running on, what kind of graphics settings we've got, the fact that we've got ray tracing on. And yeah, we're dropping down to like 90 frames per second, which isn't too bad overall. I mean, looks amazing, performs amazing. Yeah, not bad. Okay, so over to Warzone, and again we're at 4K, we're rendering at 4K, VSync is turned off. Pretty much everything is kind of maxed out, or at least towards the high end of the scale. We have also got ray tracing enabled. We have also got DLSS set to balanced. And of course, because you know this is Call of Duty, we have got motion blur, film grain, and everything else that's going to help us and give us an advantage turned off. Okay, so we are just going into a warm-up lobby, but we're currently sitting at 168 frames per second. So not bad at all, really. 129, 130. I mean, just to show you guys kind of what the performance is as I run round, we don't really need to see. Yeah, I mean, 120 frames per second. Yeah, we don't really need to see too much going on as long as we can kind of get a general idea of what kind of frame rate we're actually getting. Again, dropping in 156 frames per second, 160. So yeah, pretty decent overall. Yeah, drops down to about 120 when we're in the middle of some kind of gunfight. And lastly, we was going to try Forza Horizon 5 because it is visually one of the best looking games I've ever seen. But for some reason, there is a bug going around at the moment and it just sits like this for, well, forever. Just loading. So Microsoft, if you're watching this and whoever helped develop this game, sort it out. So there you have it, guys. I wanted to show a little bit of performance just purely because doing a build video, if we didn't show performance, I know what the comment section would be like. I want to see some performance, why I do a build video and not sort of show that. But for me, it was more about showcasing what these fans are capable of in terms of not just the lighting effects, but the performance. I mean, even during the high points of kind of gameplay, I didn't hear the fans ramp up whatsoever. I mean, we have got them set on a fairly conservative kind of fan profile, but putting my hand behind the rear fan, I can still feel mass amounts of airflow being pushed through, and it is cold air as well. Yet I can't hear it, especially over, you know, our graphics card, which is pretty much renowned as being one of the most silent graphics cards on the market. So I think Be Quiet have done a really, really good job here, and they've kind of taken the technology that they have from their fans, which we already knew were great anyway, and just added some visual aesthetics to it. And I think they've done a really, really good job. And I think I can honestly say, you know, the aesthetics do look really, really nice. Easily controlled through your motherboard software. In our case, it was MSI Dragon Center or MSI Center, whatever they're calling it these days. And yeah, things just look good. I'd like to see maybe Be Quiet actually incorporating these fans into some of their other products, so maybe with the AIOs and stuff like that as time goes on. But yeah, I want to say thank you to Be Quiet for sponsoring this video, and let me know if you do like these build videos, because we haven't done one in a while, and the last kind of sponsored Be Quiet one we did was outside in the snow. So this one was actually quite nice, having it inside where it's a little bit warmer. But yeah, if you want to see more kind of build videos, let me know in the comments section below. Give me a like on this video as well, and that kind of tells us that you maybe want to see some more of this. And again, thank you to Be Quiet for sponsoring this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. See you later, guys. Bye bye.